name is Micaiah Stevens. Welcome to game design number 8. We're working on a game called Hamlet from Haven Studios. It's available on Steam. You can leave a comment in the video. So today we're going to be talking about Stadia. It's kind of a Google. Hopefully I'll get the idea of this. I just going to talk a little bit about some of these topics. Why I thought it was disruptive. We're going to be talking about networking, multiplayer, and then we're going to be talking about computers. Talk about Google and their idea for all this, and then we'll talk about some of the sea change. I think is, and we'll probably wrap up with a little bit of we'll wrap up with the conclusions. Anyway, so go to Google Stadia. It's by Micaiah Stevens. It's Google's new toy. So this is kind of from their Stadia.dev as a studio. I think it's really. I thought this was just a good way to showcase what Stadia is as a developer platform. So, why is it disruptive? Well, I think part of it, it's hard to sort of really see. I think maybe for a lot of people it might be hard to see why this is disruptive. We've seen a ton of these technologies come and go. There has been many streaming services, stuff like that, that has come and gone, and it hasn't really stuck around. I think this is kind of one of the bigger. Google is one of the bigger companies out there, I would say, and it's just kind of like if Apple's doing streaming service, and it's like, wow, that's crazy. It's what's not crazy? It's pretty smart of them, and they have the powerhouse and ability to pull this off. So, hopefully we'll talk about a little bit. By the end of this, I'm hoping you'll see why I think it's pretty disruptive. I think it's it's inevitable. Also, it's one of those things where it's like just where computers were going. I kind of thought they would go this way a little bit sooner, but let's get right into it. So we're going to be talking about multiplayer. Just kind of thought I'd give a good background on multiplayer because it really would. Highlight the difference here is in sort of where multiplayer is going in general, which I think is the biggest benefit to Stadia, and then we'll sort of see the disruptive areas that sort of takes over and becomes. So we kind of talk about first where we came from. Just kind of this is my own personal take on game development. We're going to start with Torchlight. Torchlight 1. I guess I didn't get a date on this. I probably should have. Anyways, it's by Riddick Games. You can look up Wikipedia and stuff like that. This is the original one. After Diablo's, some of the developers left and created Riddick Games, and then they started creating this Torchlight game. I think for the reason I would like to talk about this in multiplayer is there's no multiplayer. It's a pure single-player game, and I think that's sort of this highlights, I think, for me, because me and my buddy picked up a Torchlight, and I was going through the game, and he was going through the game, and after, we would sort of get together and be like, oh man, I finally got through that boss, and I can't believe that, the mage item drop or the archer item dropped, and he's like, oh man, I really wanted that archer item. I got the warrior item, and it's just like, I don't remember what classes. I definitely was probably, anyway. So it's like it was a shared social experience, but only in the fact that we were talking and friends, and it was all single player, and you couldn't even play together. That changed with Torchlight 2, also published by Riddick Games. It's play co-op with your friends via LAN or over the internet for free. Our matchmaking service lets you connect and play games with people around the world. So yeah, I read this is like, we never actually got to play Torchlight. I picked it up and I just never really played it in multiplayer, but I did sort of think about some of these LAN games and connecting with people, and it was actually quite brutal. It's like, it's like nowadays it's just like, you just piece of cake, just connect to something. A lot of times, depending if you're using a pretty reliable service, there are still some low developers out there that are starter developers that sort of, it's kind of a pain. But yeah, a lot of this in the start of this was always like all services was terrible. That you'd have to figure out how to open up your ports and do a lot of things. So it was really complicated, but it was still sort of you're connecting. You're picking up the game. You were playing it. And you sort of, if you and then a lot of these, there's certain types of multiplayer games. I think this is maybe a bad example, but I mean, it's a great example for multiplayer, but not in the grand scheme of talking about these things. But in this instance, it's like we're sort of just trying to create a one-to-one connection, peer-to-peer connection or whatever you want to call it, to connect, my computer with their computer and have that shared experience in game, which is cool, And I think they sort of, it sort of epitomizes me that sort of Torchlight 2 um, with the multiplayer aspects. And then we get into Torchlight 3. Oh wait, I mean Frontiers. It's published by Extras Games. It's I build it as a massive multiplayer game, and the website is Torchlight Frontiers. Torchlight Frontiers combines the heart of the beloved Torchlight series with a shared, persistent, and dynamically generated world. In true Torchlight styles, players will team up with friends and devoted pets to hack and slash their way through a vibrant world, discover ancient ruins of lost civilizations, and brave dungeons filled with dangerous creatures, deadly bosses, and of course, loads of loot! So this is kind of where we're at right now in terms of you pick up you either buy the game online and download the copy of it. You still you sort of own the game, but you own the key of the game that you have. But they sort of a lot of people are running the servers now. And so instead of we can still meet up in group with my buddy, but everything's online now, and a lot of these too are. For me, it's like I have a pretty insane computer, and it's like, I'm like, oh, hey, let's play Torchlight Frontiers, in 6 months, or I don't know when the release is, but, a year from now, let's say, we'll say, hey, let's play Torchlight Frontiers. Okay, so I'll download it in like 2 minutes or 5 minutes or something like that and be like, playing it, and he's like a slower modem, often, so it's like, well, okay, I'll see you tomorrow. But yeah, so it's still quite a bit of concerns there. It's still sort of client to MMO based, where it's like you have, you're still buying a client, and you're still sort of. I guess maybe a better example of this would have been, or a different example would have been other games that are sort of like you can play the offline experience as well, and you can totally, which are play with groups of people and offline, and you still connect to the servers, but this is sort of where the multiplayer is going, and I think it's amazing, but it's one of those things like where it's like you're paying $15 a month now. I don't know what Torchlight's I don't think they're I almost would want to say they're sort of going to the free to play with services and paid transactions, but I don't know what their business model is. But there's a whole gamut of things going on. So that's just a brief overview of the multiplayer. So how does it kind of relate to Stadia, and why I think this is such a sea change of, it just means a massive change of things. It's just completely, if this is really what they're touting is going to happen, why would this be so crazy? Well, to go for that, we got to talk a little bit about computers, which is kind of even before multiplayer. But I felt like the multiplayer was good. That there are two types of computers in my mind. There's probably multiple types of computers out there. Just for Apple versus Mac, and various Apple and Mac are the same, but IBM versus IBM versus a Mac, or versus a Linux, but in reality, there's just really two types of computers. We've got the desktop. The desktop is what I love and use. It's it's a pretty powerful machine. It's a pretty powerful machine. I like the fact I can just swap out my graphics card and get right up to the latest. If I had the money, I should say, get it right up to the one of the better graphics cards. which is even better than the consoles. Yeah, so consoles are sort of this desktop, sort of you basically own the machine, which sort of and it sort of runs your games. And the more powerful machine you get, you could spend, like, oh, I could spend $1,000, and it's like, no, I mean, you really have, you should go out to these specialty websites and put together a $10,000, PC, and that's just even on the low end spectrum of, you could put, pretty high end. Plus, too, it's also some of those don't even have the cutting edge technology and the, just released, NVIDIA graphics cards that are like $10,000 just for a graphics card. But anyways, I digress. So the desktops are pretty powerful, but it's sort of eclipsed because we used to have this technology of workstations, and it sort of was the invent of computers, where you have this workstation or a terminal. I was also thinking it would be a good terminology for it. There's all different types of, and talking about MUDs and design number 7, it really feels like this could fit with that pattern of these were the MUDs and the roguelikes and all these rogues and it was all played on a workstation that was like, it was just a monitor basically that had, somewhat, that was connected to, that had internal circuitry to sort of run and connect, and had a modem, and you dial up and do all these things. And the universities had the huge computer banks of, massive computer banks, and paid for these millions and millions of dollars, and probably billions as well overall, and these, and you would just connect through connect through them. Sometimes it was an open connection. Sometimes it was you had to log in through your university ID and various things like that. And it's like, it seems like Stadia, in my mind, is like where we get into this future now of that these desktops will probably go, could essentially, I think they'll always be around. That's, it's like, one of my friends sort of related it, when this all came out, and I was like talking about it, and they were just like, "Oh, it's not a big deal," and they kind of related it to the fact that, well, cars are a convenience and they're awesome, but people still ride bikes, and it's like, it's sort of but it's like, yeah, that's true that we'll always have games around, we'll always have most likely desktops, depending on how disruptive and how much of a sea change, and if this sort of takes over. And it's like, and the benefits of that start showcasing how, I was going to showcase setting up an account. I guess we'll talk about it. I lost my second monitor. It didn't stop power. It was the new monitor too. Anyway, so we'll talk a little bit about that. But it's like, if this really is sort of the everything they're promising, and it's sort of like this idea that yeah, it would be nice to have a really awesome computer, but the internet connection is really going to be what it's at. And it's like, if you could connect, like we were talking about the Torchlight Frontiers here. If you could just, if I was playing Torchlight Frontiers and my buddy was like, "Hey, I want to play that too," oh, I don't have it downloaded. If you can just open up a Chrome browser and just join my game, I mean, that's just going to be within seconds. I mean, that's just going to completely destroy the massive multiplayer market. Like Torchlight Frontiers is like, they're going to have to, in my opinion, would have to retool their entire sort of things and just, go towards that. At least there probably will still have the mega downloads and the counts, and everything will be the same, but there will also be a subset of the game. In if Torchlight does that, Electra, and their publishers do that, then they would have to, would probably sort of build this out, sort of as a test feature as well, to continue that. But it's like, when you have that ability to sort of, plus two, the cheating and the benefits of this is going to be insane, because it's like right now, any internet traffic that you send is pretty much, anybody can access that, and it's like a massive effort. I mean, it's still going to be, a difficult way to you're still going to have to manage these security flaws and sort of there's going to be more complex hacks and various things. But if it really works out like the multiplayer, it's just going to be a massive sea change. Um, oh yeah, I guess we're already here. Yeah, so let's talk about the setting up the account though. Like it's sort of like Google's take on this is sort of their catchphrase is "This is for everyone," and I think I think that could be their goal. But as a developer, like I run a studio, I don't run I used to have a bigger well, I used to have a actual company, but right now I just run a sort of a home studio is why I build out the technology and build up these things. But it's like to set up, and a lot of this is just they're trying to get, they're sort of um, they a lot of it is um, sort of the test beds, like when Google Glass, the Explorer versions, and Halo Lens, and a lot of this stuff was like, it cost $5,000 to run a to purchase an Explorer edition of, or I don't remember how much it was. I think it was 5 or 15,000, or just really expensive to help fund the cost. Plus, it's sort of, they don't have the everyone development set up, and it's like, but you when you start developing, setting up the account over there, it's like they're like, hey, what's your tax identification number? It's like they're pretty much, they could like steal your entire studio. I don't, it's like, it's sort of like ridiculous what they're asking for. And it's just like and to me, it's like the amount of information that people will just turn over to them to get access to this is kind of crazy as well. But I'm not, it's just it's kind of ridiculous that yeah, sure, when you're setting up when you should be able to set up a company without giving up their tax ID number, unless you sort of unless you're setting up a payment model, which is not what you're doing yet. So it's just kind of ridiculous of all the questions they're asking for, and that they're required, and you have to enter all this information. It was kind of like I felt kind of skeezy going like that's just wow, like just to even apply for the dev license, you're like you have to do all these things, and then like then how many I don't know what they're going to do. I think they're going to ramp up. My hope is that they are going to really ramp up later, but it's just kind of like wow. And it's not just I can't. I mean, it is sort of a like I do see like like there's a lot of as a developer, there's a lot of things that are going on that's just making it harder and harder to sort of getting to development. Where you have Unity's collaboration and these paid services, and it's like now Visual Studios is it's like to run it's like just to run an even basic studio as now it costs me about $200 a month. I estimate with the Unity Dev license and the Visual Studio, and that's sort of like I think in the multiplayer side for Stadia is going to be unbelievable if you could connect people to an MMO. Like if I could just log into WoW right now within 2 seconds of this video. I mean, it's maybe on a gig connection or something, but I mean that just seems ridiculous and just really, I mean it seems probable, and that's sort of where the technology is going. That's sort of I thought we were going to get to this sooner, but and part of that too is like the having all that server, it's like you're sending not the server data or the client connection or whatever. It's like you're sending commands back and forth, like, oh, hey, move my player, jump, do various things like that. But the flip side of that, though, is, the cost of that is just going to be, insane to sort of, it's like, they'll be supported by ads. I mean, there's going to be all sorts of, you could be paying. It's like, if it costs them $5 a month per se versus it cost them $7 a month now to run a WoW. So I don't know what the numbers are, but to me it's like they'll still charge, even if it was a couple of dollars cheaper or several dollars cheaper, they'll still charge you $15 a month to be able to connect to some of these MMO services. But as far as the connectivity, if you can get millions and millions of people and just and then if it really is that connected to people and then too, it's like how is it going to be to, you know, is it going to be you're connecting to Bristlebane or I don't remember some WoW server. It's like that's when WoW is sort of the technology is kind of older that you're still not well they then they have paid server transfers, but all these things are still going to be a problem. But as a non-studio dev too, I think as a non-multiplayer dev, it's like a lot of these connected games are going to be more and more required. Like why doesn't Hamlet have 2-second downloads, and why can't I play Hamlet in 2 seconds? Why do I have to actually download a gig file, and why do I have to download updates, and I just want to play the game. And it's like a lot of those features are going to be behind that paywall for Google, and then too it's like, well, now I'm paying Google instead of Steam, so it's like, and that's too, it's like where it's sort of, and I think that's the other thing too about the consoles. Like we talked, this is sort of like consoles are invited to join this, but it's like I think a lot of people should be like, wait a second. I mean, I think consoles are going to die out in a generation or two as desktop. I was looking at a desktop, and I'm like, it's only $300 to get a decent desktop, and I'm like, wow, I should pick. I wish I had a couple $100 to. I'd love to have a second PC running music and internet searches and various things like that, and nice to, because I'm connected online, but those consoles are like, why would you pay $300 to buy a console when you could just open up a Chromebook? Plus, too, that console is limited. It can't put out the 8K resolutions that Stadia is promising in a few years. It can't even hardly put out the 4K now. Maybe some of the newer ones, I guess, put out the 4K. But it's like, instead of investing in the console, and that's sort of the benefit, I think, in some respects, instead of investing the $300,000, $500,000 into a console, also the games, but, it's another, we're still, who knows what games but you'll want to buy an 8K monitor for $300, $500 instead. And that's the other thing I really haven't talked about that I do want to talk about, though, is the fact that in this model, even for the consoles, when you buy Halo for the Xbox One console, you own Halo. You have a physical cartridge if you want. You have a disc. You have a CD key. You actually own Halo. And if Microsoft shuts down tomorrow, which is unlikely, but if they were, you could almost still play that game. You don't have to go to GOG Games to play that game. You don't have to go through and try to set up some hokey server to run this game. A lot of these other games, people are doing that. But when you start doing this workstation university model, you don't own, the universities own the game, and they own the servers, and they own everything. All you get is just a monitor and and it's like a fancy monitor with a keyboard and a mouse and a joypad, and it's like that's all you own. You don't actually, and you'll go out and you'll spend 80, and that's the thing too. It's like you'll continue to probably have to spend $80, $100, or who knows how expensive games will become in the next few years. But I mean, they might be cheaper in some respects, but they'll also still continue that price model for these AAA games that, Borderlands 3, was just announced. It's probably going to be cheaper than most games because they're sort of a smarter studio, but, the next Call of Duty 17 is going to be, $80, even though it's like you don't own the game, you're just paying for the right to access the server, and then on top of that have to pay, $30 a month, or $30 for a season pass, and it's like you're going to be nickeled and dimed to death. And it's just like it's really cool in the multiplayer aspect, but in terms of the actual console sort of desktop actually owning the game. Like when you buy Hamlet, you own the game. It's like I'm indebted to the people that own the game because they bought the game and they want to see it. And then all the NDAs, all the licenses will be, well, we can shut down our server anytime we want. And it's like, if you pay $70 for a game, and it's like they just, oh, we didn't get enough money. I'm not saying Google does this, but there are dev studios out there that won't make enough money or don't like the, what their, the cost of it. Hopefully their cost would be down lower that they can make more money and not feel better. But to me, it's like it's just going to be like, hey, I just spent $70 for a game, and they shut down the servers, and Fallout, online fiasco. Oh, I paid a whole, $120, bought this premium pack, and now it's they're like, we're going to shut down the server, and too bad, or we're not going to support it, or it's just really, and you don't. I mean, you lose out with MMOs. When I stop playing for WoW, it's like I lose out on that sub and I can't play anymore, even if I wanted to check out. And there's some free weekends, but honestly, it's like, and so yeah, I do, in a sense, think that just in wrapping up, I do think in the sense of multiplayer that this will be good and that there are some benefits, and if it's everything that they're promising, this is just going to be disruptive in the fact that it will just completely change the thing, because people are going to be able to, if they can actually connect within 2 seconds and then have a 8K resolution versus, the next console, what's it going to have? 8K? Yeah, sure, that's going to last a couple years, and then a couple more years we'll have a 16K resolution, monitors and all sorts of craziness, and instead of upgrading the console, people are going to start more and more to say, why? We're just going to we're gonna upgrade the monitor instead and focus on. And I think that's sort of good, but then it's like, I will always have a desktop, because as a developer, as working on these things, it's like you're gonna always, these things will still stay around. And I think for the short term, especially, we'll have this hybrid of. I think that's why their consoles are like, well, we're gonna make money while we can, maybe before this all goes, to this, and then too, it's how can you compete? I didn't even talk about the competition. Let's talk about the competition. It's like, I read an article and it was like, well, there's people that can compete, and it's like, yeah, well, I imagine that it's going to be like a cell phone service. It's like there's other cell phone services, but they're going to be renting from Google. They're going to be offering a package or less packages or something, but for cheaper or whatever, but they're going to be renting their servers from Google. I mean, you look at the Google servers, are just mind-bogglingly how big they are. And yeah, Amazon is a competitor. They could come out with a service, and they've been working on something similar, but I just I don't see that they're working on this sort of type of technology. And yeah, maybe Microsoft could compete, but they're going to have to partner up with a bigger server provider. They already they have servers and they have infrastructure, but it's not anywhere near the craziness of Google and the worldwide as well. I mean, maybe I don't know what the the business infrastructure and what the other infrastructure is, but to me, the competition in this is just like, and it's sort of like universities were the only ones that were able to run all this stuff back in the day, where they had these grants and tons of money, and they were buying these massive servers, and people are connecting through them and learning through them, but yeah, so it's like we could almost sort of see that, where it's, instead of universities now, it's going to be Google and these big companies, and they probably will have to rent out their servers through Google and eventually hopefully get their own servers. And I just that I think it's going to pull the rug out from a lot of people, if this really does what everything it says it does. And hopefully they'll get the devs set up where it is more like on on the Google Play Store. It's like $50-$100. You can set up a Google Play account, dev account, and publish to the phones now. And I think that's sort of like I do like that model because it gives people the opportunity, me the opportunity as well, is just to publish the games that people want to play. There are some limits to that of people publishing really bad games that are being pulled. Thankfully, shootings and all sorts of horrible games that people are not just shooting, but the really bad school shooting type of games that are just not warranted, I think, and I'm glad people are pulling that. But anyway, so hopefully they'll get more dev out there, and then hopefully I think as a studio, I think I will publish Hamlet. I'll look at sort of what I can do with the development of this, but it's like I just don't see myself sort of setting up a monthly payment. It's like you have to have a lot of like always people are like, oh, I want to make an MMO, and it's like you have to have a ton of money to sort of run your servers for years at a loss, most likely, to sort of have it feel like it's going to be good and that people are going to you're going to build up your customer base and build up your experience through maybe one or two MMOs before and it's like there are lucky few out there. But anyway, so that's my take on Google Stadia. Thanks very much. I know it's quite long. Let's see, about 30 minutes, so I appreciate everybody. Thanks very much, and I'll see you next time. You take care. Have a good one.